Hi, welcome to DrumWise Meets. Today I'm here with the drummer from Biffy Clyro. This is DrumWise Meets Ben Johnston. Hi Ben.
Hello, how are you?
So my first question for you today, Ben, what age did you get into drums, and when you first started playing, what bands or artists inspired you?
Okay, what age did I get into drums? I guess I was always kind of hitting things. I think this is the same for most drummers, whether it's pots and pans or pillows. There was no drum kit at my school, however, so I didn't get to play a drum kit until I was actually about 14. My interest was kind of coming through when I was about 12 or 13, and I had pictures of drum kits up beside my bed instead of girls, which is, I think my parents got a bit worried, and I kept pestering my dad, and he kept saying you'll give up this thing in 1 week type thing, and I kept slipping little certified ads, you know, from the local newspaper, drum kit for sale type thing, under his nose at breakfast, and he just kept saying drum kits are too expensive, no chance, all the rest of it. And I just kept pestering him, and then one day I came home from school when I was 14, and he got me a drum kit. I had to pay him back, of course, but he bought me a drum kit, and I just went crazy, running around the house screaming like a little girl for about 45 minutes, because I'd literally never sat behind a kit before. And I just got behind it and just started playing it, and I was just able to do it. It's just something that I could do naturally. And at that point in time, I kind of just discovered Nirvana, and that was a massive, Dave Grohl, massive influence on me. And then the whole grunge scene on top of that was a big deal. I'd liked Guns N' Roses beforehand. Dire Straits were probably my first love when I was very young. So yeah, like a lot of great stuff in there. And I grew up in a house where Beatles were always on, Steely Dan was always on, Stevie Wonder, a really musical household. So I got a very good kind of core to start from, I think, from my parents.
Cool. And did you and your brother, because obviously your brother being a bass player, did you ever like jam when you were younger? Did you start at a similar time?
Not really. James wasn't very much of a musician. He wasn't musical. He didn't actually study music in school. Simon and I were in the same music class, and that's how we ended up wanting to jam together. But no, James wasn't at all, and he'd play a little bit of guitar, you know, maybe even shout about it, but he could definitely play a bit of guitar. What happened was Simon and I and the previous bass player, we had some studio time booked to go and do a demo. And then at a party, this guy got drunk and took a swing at me. So we kicked him out of the band, and then we said to James, like, I think it was 3 weeks, you have 3 weeks to learn bass guitar to come in the band, and that's how James ended up in Biffy. So that's quite a cool story, that.
Cool, nice. Excellent. And you talked about getting your first drum kit when I think you said you were 14. I think it's one of those moments that we all remember. I really remember getting my first drum kit. What was your first kit?
My first drum kit was a Premier Resonator. It was a 9-piece, and it was kind of ugly orange colour. I'm not entirely sure if it was a resonator, however, because when it came, somebody just stuck their own plywood into the inside of the drum. That was not like Premier wood that was in there. It was just someone's plywood from their shed, to try and get that ear gap to get the resonant drum situation. But it was a great kit. You could fling your arms around and not miss, because there were cymbals and there was drums everywhere, and I used to play on that thing for hours and hours every day. And
big question: do you still have it?
No, I'm devastated. I don't actually. I think my dad sold it once. I think I was away on tour, and I hadn't really given strict instructions not to sell it, so that happened. Yeah, and I got myself a pedal export after that.
So, talking about equipment, talk us through your current equipment setup.
Okay, so I'm using Peril. I've been with Peril for many years now, and they're very good to me. And I'm using, I believe it's called a Maple Reserve at the moment. I think I was one of the first artists to try this. At least they told me that. Maybe they were just trying to stroke my ego. But it's like a brilliant white, or rather matte white Maple Reserve, and it's just, oh my God, these shells are unbelievably loud and round and fat, and it's almost like you don't need to tune the drum. You just fling a skin on it and it's like boom, which is perfect, absolutely perfect. Kick drum, massive resonation out it, real bottom. Again, it EQs itself. It's got top end. It's a beautiful, beautiful kit. And then I've got a host of Sabian cymbals that I play as well, and Pro Mark sticks, which are modelled on the Neil Peart 747 sticks, but they are the Ben Johnston Biffy Clyro sticks or whatever.
Yeah. These next couple of questions, a few people have found difficult, but I'm not here to make your life easy, Ben. So here we go. Okay. So if you had to pick just one, who would be your all-time favourite drummer?
Just one. That's so hard because it's a toss-up, and I'm upsetting myself by having to pick one, but I'm gonna go with Neil Peart.
Okay.
Purely just because it's so hard to say this though, because I want to say Dave Grohl as well, because he, for me, kind of, changed the idea of what's possible for me at least. But I think maybe Neil Peart just purely for the flair and the fact that Neil Peart made, or rather Rush were popular to a lot of people because of the drummer, and I think that alone makes Neil Peart, he takes the mantle, he wins.
And so now if I make your life a bit easier and say, give us some other names, because I know that you found that tough. So
that was difficult.
So talk about your other big influences.
Big influences would be William Goldsmith, who actually played briefly with the Foo Fighters, but was also in a band called Sunny Day Real Estate. Massive influence. If you listen to their early records, sounds like I'm playing on them. Peter Moffat from Burning Airlines was a big influence. Dave Grohl, obviously, huge influence. I think the way he mixes power and chops, and he has flair, but also just holds it down. I think he's second to none when it comes to that. It's good old Dave, and he's a lovely, lovely man as well. Got to add that in. I know everyone says that, but it's just true. He's just the nicest guy ever. Darren Jesse from Ben Folds 5, another huge influence on me. That's more of a kind of jazz style, which is something I would love to be able to do. I suck at it, but I've always looked up to him and I've always tried to kind of emulate what he does to a degree. Who else? Also, Mark Heron from Oceanside was a huge influence when I was growing up. We started touring, or when we started touring, it was quite often with them, and we'd get our heads together and talk drums for hours and hours. And he's definitely an inspiration in terms of what he was able to do, and the amount of hours he put in practicing was incredible, and the results are there for all to see.
And speaking of him, actually, he's a name from years ago. I remember going to see Oceanside. Am I right in saying that someone told me that he used to be a helicopter engineer or something, and his setup was like, I think, did he have his hi-hat in the middle or something?
He had his hi-hat right in the middle, with the snare drum also right in the middle, just below the hats, and then tom-toms either side, and then, rack toms either side, then floor toms either side from that, and everything was angled, like quite a metal setup. Everything was angled really quite flat, and he's quite a short dude as well. So, and then tons and tons of cymbals. A really impossible kit to play, for me at least. But in order for it to work, he had to actually engineer all these little parts. It was kind of before you had remote hi-hat stuff, so you kind of made his own remote hi-hat situation that sat, like I say, like kind of. How did he have it? Because he had there was just one kick drum, but two kick drum pedals. And then the hi-hat pedal was beside the other kick drum pedal, but that went through like this big loom thing. It was mental, and it broke every gig. This thing would break every single show. So yeah, I think he was a nightmare to be in a band with. There's no doubt about that. But what such absolutely stunning drummer! Like so quick and so precise, so powerful.
What's been the highlight of your career so far?
Oh, Jesus, there's been so many. There's so many things have happened to Biffy that we never expected, that's been mind blowing. But I'm gonna stick down the kind of drum route here. I would say we're playing a festival in Norway, and I turned round to see Dave Grohl just kneeling by James's bass amp and rocking out to our band and watching me like as if we were a drum tech, or just going like, yeah, and throwing the horns up. And although, like, obviously we've had massive career highlights with Biffy headlining Reading and Leeds and stuff, and Tea in the Park and all these huge gigs. For me as a drummer, that was just the ultimate thing that could happen, you know, because as a kid watching Nirvana play at the MTV Awards when they played Aneurysm, and I fell in love. And to think I think I saw that when I was 12 or 13, and if that kid was to ever think that Dave Grohl would be side stage, bobbing his head, throwing the horns to our band, then yeah, I would have said you're insane. So that's, for me, that was a massive highlight. I'll never forget that. We're now friends and stuff, so it maybe doesn't seem as cool, but for me, I've still always remember that moment.
Oh, awesome. That's a pretty cool moment.
It fucking is, right?
Awesome. So from career highlights to maybe the other end of the scale a little bit here, have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you can tell us about? Whether it's like a gear fails or brain fails, you know, I want like the proper like hilarious stories of like fuck ups.
I'll give you a couple. So the first one is how we get signed. This is weird. So we managed to make a kind of demo, and we were on a kind of college label at the time called Electric Honey, and we're playing what was called the tea break stage at Tea in the Park, where unsigned bands get to go and hopefully get signed. And Roger Truss from Beggars Banquet came up to watch us play that show. And we already had 57 at this point, which is on our first album, Black Sky. And that song starts with the guitar, dang, 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 kick drum, breaks. So the chain breaks on that first hit, and Simon like cuts all his hands open over the guitar and blood's everywhere and stuff. So, but luckily I'm playing double kick drum, so I just go side saddle and start using the left pedal and stuff while my little brother, who's a drum tech, goes and steals somebody else's kick drum pedal to get to the show. But it was a nightmare. Like, so imagine the very first beat of the song, you have no kick drum. You've got no, you know, there's no way to make a beat without a kick drum and just sit and play. It was horrific. It's the stuff of absolute nightmares. But because we got through the adversity of that, we got offered a record deal. So, you know, the guy watched the show and went, "This is a band that can pick themselves back up." So yeah, that worked. Another one was oh Christ, I think it was Germany. We're playing a festival in, and I was really quite slim at this point, and I don't know why I decided to do this, but I decided to go commando and just put on my kind of smart trousers that I had that were quite tight, but you know, it's all good. Or so I thought. And it's an outdoor show, and I go to step up on the riser, and as I step up on the riser, whoosh, the whole trousers go from the front seam to the back seam, so everything just falls out, and I'm sitting there going, "Help!" And there's video cameras because it's all been filmed for the big screen for the folk out front. I'm screaming at my drum tech, "Don't let any cameras get back here!" And yeah, it was just there on the seat on the drum throne, and I had to play the entire show right up until the encore, where I got some encore trousers to put on with my stuff out.
I love that. That's brilliant.
I'll never do that again.
So, when you're creating your drum parts, basically, how do you go about it? Because a lot of your parts are really melodic, and you know, you're not just like playing a groove. I defy anyone to listen to you and be like, "Oh, it's just a beat." Like, I've taught many songs that you've played drums on over the years, and there's so many like little intricate bits. So just talk to us about how you come up with those bits.
It's probably mostly just bouncing off the guitar. Simon's very rhythmical with what he writes. It's not like he comes in and just goes, "Here's 4 chords," and I'm like, "No, let's do this for them." It's not like that at all. It comes mostly from the guitar, and then I'll try and bounce off that as best I can. So I'm always trying to serve the song. That's first and foremost. But like you say, I'm not just here to keep time. You know, I want the drums to be musical and to have a bit of expression. So it's just about finding your feet. Sometimes Sal will come in, he'll have an idea on guitar, and he'll also have an idea about what the drum part should be already, and he'll pretty much, you know, beatbox it to me, and I'll recreate it, and it works perfectly. Or sometimes he won't even give any suggestions. He'll just play the riff and see what I come up with naturally, and he'll be like, "Oh, that's not what I was thinking. That's cool." Or he'll be like, "Oh, that's fucking terrible. Let's change it." You know. So you know, there's not any one set way that happens, but it's just basically kicking stuff around until we all get, you know, the arms sticking up on our the arms, the hairs on our arms sticking up.
I know what you mean.
That's the taste test.
So obviously, there's lots of well-known drummers that sing and play drums at the same time. You do both of those things for Biffy. Do you find it hard, or when you first started doing it, did you find it difficult to play drums and sing?
It's actually a question I get asked quite a lot, and my answer is as follows: it's the same as playing guitar and singing, really. You're just getting the rhythm of one thing down, and until you've got it completely muscle memory off pat, and then the singing comes later. So once this becomes just something you can do, you can then add the vocal to it, and it's not any different from having to learn the rhythm of changing chords, the rhythm of your hand, and singing. The only difference, however, is you're moving a lot when you're drumming, so your voice tends to do this a lot, and that's the biggest struggle for a singing drummer, is to try and keep their voice on the level whilst they're doing mad fills at the same time.
So onto a couple of curveball questions now, and the first one of those is, what are your hobbies away from drums?
Ooh, well, my favourite hobby away from drums is golf, which also requires perfect timing. And right now, my golf game, my timing is terrible. I can't hit the bloody ball. I like to fish when I'm on tour. Pretty much any sport I like. I like gaming as well. You know, a bit of FIFA, a bit of DayZ. Yeah, and I like playing guitar as well a little bit. I played guitar before I took up the drums, so I still do that now and again. I also took up running during lockdown. I turned 40. I decided it's time to I hadn't really run since I was a teenager. I played chasing a football, so I thought, yeah, let's do this, because I didn't want to be that guy that runs from the bus and can't breathe, you know. So yes, I've been running. I did my first 10K not that long ago. Also like cycling. I mean, honestly, I've got so many hobbies. I could be here all day telling you. Table tennis, darts, flipping, yeah, everything.
But that question came from the fact that I thought about this when I first started these interviews, and I thought, well, no matter where we are in our careers and you know what we do with drums in our careers, whether it's teaching, playing, recording, whatever, drums will have started as a hobby for all of us. Right. And that hobby has then become a career, whether it be, a career in playing live or teaching. It's still drums. And I think that you can still think of it as a hobby. It's just a hobby that like pays the bills.
Exactly. You're spot on with that. That is it. I mean, I'd be playing drums regardless. It doesn't matter if it's putting money in my bank or not. I'm playing drums for the love of drums. Like throughout lockdown, for example, I'm sure everyone got a bit depressed, and it was very difficult not to bring out the wee tiny violin, but it was very difficult for touring musicians to just lose their identity overnight, and for it's now like a year and a half or something. So yeah, when I found myself getting really down and I sometimes couldn't really place what was missing, I'd just get in the car and go out to the practice room and just get behind the kit for an hour or so, and my God, the difference that makes to your headspace. Not just the exercise side of it, which is very important for mental health, but just the feeling you get from playing drums. You know, it goes back to drum circles from way back when. You know, it's a thing that lifts the spirit. And you can play drums on your own and still get a similar feeling. But yeah, it's the endorphins it releases, and then I come back home and I'm not this crabbit bastard again.
Now, on to the second curveball question, which is the most anticipated question of this whole DrumWise Meets series. This is the one that everyone's been talking about. So, what's your favourite biscuit?
Oh, Christ. What constitutes it as a biscuit? I mean, that's another question. I like a chocolate hobnob.
Yes.
You know, it's a strong biscuit. Take a few dunks, and it's just it kind of edges a normal hobnob just purely because of the chocolate covering, I guess.
Oh, nice. So you've answered the next part of the question. So you are a dunker then?
I mean, of course, I'm a dunker. I mean, who doesn't dunk the biscuits? I don't. If you don't dunk a biscuit, what are you doing with it? Just a straight up dry biscuit, and then trying to get your tea in time to make it. Nah, fuck that.
But and so you've alluded to the next part then. So it's tea rather than coffee.
But no, both. But for some reason, when it comes to dunking, it seems to be tea. I just drink my coffee. I don't involve biscuits in that. And to be honest, I don't eat a lot of biscuits. I maybe used to when I was a kid, but no, I've been through my biscuit frenzy, and I'm now trying to stay away from that as best I can.
So we've talked about biscuits. Can you tell us about what's maybe been one of the most interesting things on Biffy's Rider over the years?
We'd famously asked for, this shows our age, we'd asked for the promoter's favourite DVD. And that was, it wasn't, because we really wanted a DVD every gig. It was more just to see if the promoter were paying attention, because a lot of times you go to these venues and they just roll out the same rider for every band and say, well, what's the point in setting this thing ahead if you're not going to do it? So yes, we'd always ask for we started off asking for a red crayon, and that was just to see if they'd do it, and then we changed that to the promoter's favourite DVD because we thought that's something that they can get engaged with, and then we might learn something. We might get to see a movie we've never seen. So yeah, that was always that. Promoter's favourite DVD. Sometimes you got some real clangers.
So now to my final question. If you could give just one piece of advice to your younger self when you first started playing or taking drums seriously, what would that advice be?
It's a tough one because I want to say be mindful of technique is probably the main thing I would say, because I didn't take drum lessons. I'm self-taught, and now as I'm getting a little older, I've got weak wrists and stuff. I get kind of aches and pains. I get sore shoulders because I'm playing. I always play from here, from my neck and my shoulders, and that's just not right. So I would definitely have said take a couple lessons, get the foundations down, and also learn your rudiments. I'm still to this day got to practice my rudiment. I still don't have a smooth drum roll. So yeah, I said to my earlier self, get on that drum pad a bit more and work those wrists. Definitely.
What would your advice be to maybe younger guys that are sort of early on playing drums? Because I know that we've got quite a few students who are fans of Biffy. So what would you say to them? Younger guys that are just starting to play. What would you say they should sort of focus on with their drumming?
Enjoying themselves. I mean, that's the thing. It's a kind of. I'm kind of saying both sides of the argument here, because for me it was just all about enjoyment and not about technique. So I think you have to have a healthy mix of the two of them. So don't get bogged down in being the same drummer as your teacher, because then you're just gonna have a bunch of carbon copies, and that's not musicians. That's just just drummers. And a drummer is a musician, for all you people out there that don't think that's true. That is true. So yeah, enjoy yourself, express yourself, but be mindful of technique, definitely.
So Ben, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure has been all mine, Tom. Thanks so much for having me.